What's going on, guys? Today I wanted to bring you another one of my 2014 WCQ hat format deck profiles. The deck I want to show off today is Noble Knight Artifact. It's a pretty interesting take on the Noble Knight deck, and it actually has some cool synergies between the two archetypes that I'm extremely excited to show off. But one thing I want to mention is I'm going to go through the whole deck profile, but I'm going to leave the artifact cards, so the artifact monsters, spell, and traps, till the end of the profile, and that's simply because I think the ratio is very different from a lot of other decks that play artifacts, as well as they need a lot more explanation, so I don't want to stop the deck profile halfway through to explain everything with that, so I'm going to leave the artifacts towards the end. But anyways, guys, let's get into this deck profile. So starting off with the monsters, we are playing 3 copies of Noble Knight Madolche. This is your main starter, and it has the effect that it's considered a normal monster while face up on the field, but then it becomes an effect monster while equipped with a Noble Arms equip card. And what its effect will become is it becomes a dark monster, and its level is increased by 1, so it'll be a level 5, so hence why it works with the artifacts, because the artifacts are level 5 monsters, and Madolche will be a level 5 while equipped. And then it has the effect that you're able to, once per turn, if it's the only monster you control, you can special summon a Noble Knight monster from your deck, but then destroy a Noble Arms equip card equipped to it. But that won't really matter since most of your Noble Arms equip cards will re-equip when they're destroyed once per turn, but we will get to that in a little bit. After that, 3 copies of Noble Knight Boars. This is the main monster that you're usually going to summon off of Madolche, and this one has the same beginning effect where it's considered a normal monster and then becomes an effect monster while equipped with a Noble Arms equip card. And it also will become a dark and increase its level by 1. But then this one has the effect that once per turn you're able to choose 3 Noble Arms cards in your deck, shuffle them up random, your opponent picks one of them and adds it to your hand at random, and the other 2 get sent to the graveyard, and this one, the equip card will not be destroyed, so that is very important to note. So the way it works with your Madolche is, you'll summon this, but then the equip will fall off. The equip will then re-equip to the Boars. The Boars, you'll get another random equip that you can then re-equip to the Madolche to make so they're both level 5s, so then you can make a rank 5. But anyways, after that, 1 copy of Noble Knight Dristan. This one has the effect that while you control another Noble Knight monster, your opponent cannot target your monsters with less than 1800 attack. With attacks or card effects except itself, and then when a Noble Arms equipped spell is equipped to this card, you target a face-up card on the field, destroy that target, and you can only use the effect once per turn. Now, the one thing to note with this is the effect to destroy a face-up card is mandatory, so you do have to be careful with that, because if your opponent has no face-up cards, you'll end up having to destroy your own, which isn't always the best. There's some reason that you might want to play 2 of it, but I feel the deck space is slightly tight in this deck profile, and in general, the only time it really comes up of having multiple is if you're trying to make like a pseudo Watt Hopper lock or something where your opponent can't attack either of your monsters, and that really only comes up in weird situations with Soul Charge and stuff, so I think 1 is completely fine. After that, the last main Noble Knight monster I chose to play is 1 copy of Gwenhwyfar. This one is also considered a normal monster while face up on the field, but the equip effect is slightly different. It won't increase or its level or change attribute, but what this one does is you're able to target a Noble Knight monster in your graveyard and add it to your hand, and if you do, you destroy 1 Noble Arms equip spell that you control. So the thing with this one is the reason I'm choosing to play this over some of the others is because it's a way to recur your monsters. For example, if your opponent stops your Madolche before you're able to do your full combo, or if, say, they stop your Boars before you can do everything you need, this is simply a way to gain back those cards and have follow-up for the next turn, which is extremely important. After that, we play 1 copy of Gwenhwyfar. This one is a pseudo Noble Arms equip card because it's able to equip itself from graveyard or hand to a Noble Knight monster as an equip once per turn. And then it will make the monster gain 300 attack, and then it also will make the monster have an effect, or it'll give the effect sort of, depending on the attribute. So real quickly what that is if the monster is a light monster, then if it would be destroyed by a card effect, you can destroy this card instead. And if it's equipped to a dark monster, if it battles at the start of the damage step, you can destroy that monster, then destroy this card. So it's just kind of a neat little trick, and just really nice being able to, whenever you need an equip, just be able to equip it right away once per turn. And lastly, for the monsters that aren't the artifacts, 3 copies of Max C. This is a slightly slower deck in a sense, and you really do need to see your Madolche plus a re-equipable spell. So 3 Max C is just really good, and it's a way to slow down the combo decks as well, which can be kind of difficult if you don't have your board established right away. After that, moving on to the spells, again, the artifacts will be at the end. For the re-equipable spells, we have 2 copies of Noble Arms of Destiny. This one you can only control one of them, and then once per turn, if the equipped monster would be destroyed by battle or card effects, it's not. And then if it had the re-equip effect is if it's destroyed and sent to the graveyard, you can target a warrior noble knight monster you control and re-equip it once per turn. Then 1 copy of Gallatin. This one also has the re-equip effect, and this one will give the monster 1,000 attack, but then during each standby phase, it'll lose 200 attack. After that, 1 copy of Caliburn, re-equipable again, and then once per turn, you're able to gain 500 life points, and also it'll give the monster 500 attack point bonus, which is really nice. The cool thing about this is if it's destroyed and then re-equipped, you can use the effect again to gain another 500 life. So that's really cool. There's points where technically if you equip this and then it's destroyed and then you re-equip it, and then say you make an Xyz and the Xyz will re-equip again, you can technically gain up to 1,500 life points in a turn with Caliburn, which is cool. Another really interesting one is Arfaduder. This one has the effect to pop set cards, so it can pop set monsters or set spell or traps. It's also a re-equipable, and the only downside with this one is it will make the monster permanently lose 500 attack, even if it becomes unaffected by card effects or this card leaves the field or whatever. But again, it's a soft once per turn, so that's also pretty cool there. And after that, for the non-re-equipables are just 2 copies of Excalibur. So these ones, when they're destroyed, they won't re-equip, but it makes so the equipped monster can't be targeted by opponents' card effects. And it also has the effect that besides the turn it's sent to graveyard, you can banish it and rank up one of your Noble Knight Xyz monsters. So that's really cool too. And the Noble Knight Xyz are very good. We'll get to them in just a little bit. After that, 2 copies of Pot of Duality. This deck can be kind of slow. The reason I don't play 3 of this is because we're playing 3 Max C already. And also, you know, if you do open Madolche plus a re-equipable, you want to be able to do your combo, so you don't want cards that are instantly going to be dead. So I think that's why 2 is the perfect number. 2 copies of Forbidden Lance, because Breakthrough Skill is a problem against this deck, and just negation in general. The other thing to keep in mind is during this time period, the equips won't fall off because, you know, Lance was activated on your monster, so you can still equip, they just won't be affected by the effect of them, which you have to keep in mind. 1 copy of Rhoda to search your warriors, and 1 copy of Soul Charge. You really only need 1 because one of the Xyz kind of summons your stuff back, and also, you know, you're putting up boss monsters and trying to protect the castle type gameplay, so I think 1 is completely fine. For the trap cards, 2 copies of Breakthrough Skill. This deck puts up a lot of board presence, so it becomes very susceptible to things like Exciton, though a lot of the equips kind of help protect from things like that. It's just nice to not have to worry about it if you aren't able to fully get into your main combos in the deck. So I think 2 Breakthrough Skill is really important. Also, against other artifact decks when you're trying to set up the graveyard effect during your turn to banish it and negate a monster. Quick effect basically is really good too. And then other than that, you want just chainables. So this is also just an easy chainable if need be, because when you do your main Madolche combo, you'll usually have like 3 face-up continuous equip cards or whatever, or 3 of your Noble Arms equip cards minimally, usually like 2 to 3. So you wanted just other chainables so that your zones aren't super clogged. So I play 1 copy of Compulse, 1 Torrential, which is like a pseudo chainable, and then 1 Warning, just because if you just need to be able to stop your opponent's soul charges and big pushes sometimes. And that is it for the main deck, minus the artifacts. So let's get into the artifact lineup real quick. So for the artifacts, it is very different. I'm playing 2 copies of Madolche, which obviously when it's summoned on the opponent's turn will pop a face-up card, non-targeting. 1 copy of Scythe, which locks your opponent out of their extra deck. And 1 copy of Beagletech, which will pop your set cards. And yeah, so the thing with it is I'm only choosing to play 4 artifacts. The problem with this deck is if you're hard opening these, it's really, really bad in this deck specifically, because you're, like I said, if you get your main Madolche combo, you're only going to have 2 zones to work with, which means if you open any of your traps or some of the other back row removal and cards that I'm about to show in a second, it means you become very limited on what you can actually do with your back row, because again, these are just clogging. Plus you're playing max Cs, so if you play more of these, you're more likely to brick on them and draw into them already, which is a downside, and it kind of just contradicts with max C in a lot of ways. So going on to some of the other artifact or pseudo cards that help with the artifacts that'll help make more sense is I'm also only choosing to play 1 Ignition and 2 Double Cyclone. Double Cyclone is honestly better, in my opinion, in this deck, because since the Noble Arms cards can re-equip, you can always just use this, pop 1 of your Noble Arms and an opponent's card, and then re-equip it. Whereas Ignition, again, going back to clogging your zones, it will clog your zones. And also, we are still playing 3 copies of Sanctum, and so the thing with only playing 4 artifacts is you want the artifacts for interaction with the opponent more than you want it as your whole engine and being super reliant on it. So if you open an artifact, you're already lower in counts of artifacts in deck, so it means your Sanctums have more potential to be dead quicker because you were playing less artifacts. And same with why I cut Ignition. Originally I was playing 3, then I cut it to 2, and then I cut it to 1. And if I'm being honest, I almost want to cut it in general, just because with such a low artifact count, the more cards like Ignition or hard opening artifacts you see, the more your better cards like Sanctum become worse, because if you don't have targets, you can't use them. So I just think that this is the exact ratio you need. You just need to be mindful of how to use them. I've tested with a lot of other ones, and I know a lot of people have gone as far to max out more on things like Ignition. I just think with your limited amount of zones with your Noble Knight cards, you don't want to have things clogging your zones. That's also why I chose not to play Call the Haunted, because if you Call the Haunted, say a Madolche, and do your whole combo, or say you Call the Haunted an artifact and then your opponent compulses it, it stays in your zones and it clogs it, and unless you see a Double Cyclone, it's stuck in your zone, and that takes away from the chance to play more back row, and that can be really, really difficult to deal with too. So that is it for this main deck. For the extra deck, we play 1 copy of Gaia Dragon, no explanation needed there. We play rank 5s. 1 Tyrus, 1 Pleiades, 1 Volcasaurus, 1 Durendal. Durendal is actually really, really important in this deck because switching a monster effect or a normal spell or trap to pop one of your back row is really good because, again, with all the equips being able to re-equip once per turn, it just means that you always basically get a free negate, which is nice. For the Noble Knights, we are playing 2 copies of the rank 5. This one has the effect when it's Xyz summon, you target up to 3 Noble Arms equip cards in your graveyard with different name and equip it to it. And that's why I say you're always going to have basically 3 equips if you're going into the Xyz. And then it also has the effect that, I'll just pull it up for you guys right here, that once per turn you detach a material from this card and then target one other monster on the field and destroy that target. And then if this card on the field is sent to the graveyard, you can target a level 4 or higher Noble Knight monster in your graveyard and special summon that target. So it allows you to basically gain back one of your guys from graveyard too. So if you have, say, a Madolche, because the main combo you will use Madolche, it will give you follow-up if they can out this. But again, your equip cards are making it unaffected, not able to be destroyed. So it does get very hard to out. We also play 2 copies of the level 4 guy. Very similar effect, equips up to 3 equip cards in your graveyard, but then this one has the effect you detach a material and can pop spell and traps up to the number of Noble Arms equip cards to it, and then it doesn't have any other effect to it besides those 2 effects. But I think 2 is important because if your opponent stops the summon of 1, you want to still have 1 available. I've seen some builds go with just playing 1 of this. In this deck specifically, I think 2 is so important for that reason. After that, we just have generic 4s basically. We have 1 Black Ship of Corn for hands and other things that are hard to out, 1 101, 1 Exciton, 1 Tsukiyomi. This is just a way to cycle through your hand a little bit and get some draws and get rid of dead cards in hand. 1 Dweller, and then the last Xyz I chose to play was 1 Rhapsody and Berserk because it can banish cards, and since we're not main decking DD Crow like in a more pure build might, I think this card's just really good, and also it's kind of funny having another card that can equip to an Xyz and give it some attack bonus, so it can make your Noble Knights like even bigger, your Xyz, so that's kind of cool too. But anyways guys, that is the deck profile. Hopefully you enjoyed. I know it's a bit of a weirder deck, and hopefully my explanation made a little more sense, though I know this deck profile was a bit longer than it needed to be, but I felt that the artifacts just needed a lot of explanation for this deck exactly. But play around with it, let me know what you guys think, and if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like on it, comment any questions you have or videos you want to see in the future, subscribe to the channel and hit the bell to get notified anytime I put a new video out, and anyways guys, I will see you in the next video.